Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast, Don't Get a Therapist Yet. Today, I am honoured to have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Sally Conway, and she's a clinical psychologist and also a coach. Hello, welcome to my podcast, Sally. And would you like to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Wendy. It's really great to be here. I think we're going to have a lovely conversation about all the things that I'm bringing today. Um, I'm Sally Conway, like you've already said. I'm a clinical psychologist and I am a coach for highly sensitive people. I'm also an accredited EMDR practitioner.
Wow, and that sounds a lot of experience that you have there in many different specialities. And I know we agreed today to actually just really focus on the work that you do with highly sensitive people.
Mhm.
Um, and I think you actually have, I'm really interested in your download that apparently you have. You just, okay, just to sort of tell us about this free download that people can actually access um, as
Yes, of
part of the.
course. Yeah, forgotten to do that. So my download is it's just it's a document that tells you a little bit about. So it'll become more apparent why we might need this when I talk more about the trait of high sensitivity. But we often struggle with our energy, managing our energy, protecting our energy because we absorb so much from other people. So this download is a lovely way of giving you lots of tips and strategies and techniques for protecting your energy, kind of across mind, body, and soul. So it's all the techniques that my clients over the years and my own experience, I've picked out the top ones to go in there. So it's a really lovely document for people that they can get from my website.
Yeah. And I don't think I feel fulfill the criteria of being a highly sensitive person. It'd be very interesting to hear more what the criteria is. But I think I'm very interested in that download, the idea of saving energy. For the average person sounds like a really good idea. So I hope actually the listeners will actually take advantage of that. It sounds like it's a very valuable document that you've created, full of years and years of experience, and to give it away free is a great honor. So thank you for your generosity, Sally. There, I think a lot of people will really benefit from that. But the topic is today is about highly sensitive people. Um, so, are there any particular traits, would you say, that fit this description?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a whole range of aspects to this, but there are four main traits that it falls under that you can kind of recognize it by. So you can recognize it by the acronym DOES, DOES. So the D stands for depth of processing. So this means we think about things a lot more than other people. We consider situations. We observe things before we kind of jump in and make choices or decisions. So actually, we can find decision making quite difficult, and also small talk. We can struggle with small talk because we just want to get to the deep down kind of nitty gritty of stuff. The O stands for overstimulation. And this is where just having too much around us, too much noise, too many people, too much clutter, um, it really overstimulates our nervous system, and particularly if there's a performance-based element, so public speaking, meetings, that kind of thing. So we really need a lot of downtime and a lot of ways to manage that. The E stands for emotional intensity, and I think there's a lot of overlap between some of these traits, as you might imagine. This means, though, that when we feel something, we feel it quite strongly, more strongly than the general population. Um, so things like we might cry more easily at some sad news, or we might be moved to tears by a piece of music, or we might find something incredibly funny that other people maybe don't think is that funny. The other thing, because of that, then, is we appreciate perhaps music and creativity and the arts a lot more. And then the S stands for sensory sensitivity. So this is the kind of the five senses. So we can be more sensitive to pain, for example, to caffeine, to loud noises, to smells. We just notice real subtleties in the environment. So as well as the five senses, it's picking up subtleties in other people's expressions and the tone of their voice. So you can imagine the four together, you know, we pick up everything more strongly, and then we feel it more, so we think about it more. So together it's a real concoction. But there's lots of strengths with the trait as well. Being empathic, compassionate, responsive, observant. It's just learning how to use all of those things. And I should say, as I was talking, I forgot to kind of really put sorry, I did lose my track of thought there. I forgot to put, sorry, I'll just clap again.
Yeah, that's fine. Just going to make you
What am I saying?
Okay, no problem.
I've totally lost my train of thought.
And it happens, Sally. It's
Context,
absolutely fine. You probably
yeah.
just got a bit judgmental and went a bit stressed. That's all.
Yeah,
If people don't, it doesn't matter.
okay.
People don't know you've
That's
forgotten
okay.
anything because you haven't heard it before. So you're doing absolutely fine. And you don't even have to, you just, that HSP comes in and then you start apologizing, don't you? But they've got no
Absolutely,
idea you've
yeah.
forgotten anything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, I've picked up my thread again.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
What
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
so what I
All
was
right.
going to say is,
Sorry, I just
how
need
do
to
we
clap
start?
again. Just give me a
Okay,
chance to
sorry.
clap again so they know it's starting again. Okay. All right. And
So just to put this in a little bit of context, they think that around 25 to 30% of the population have this trait. So it's really quite prevalent. And as well as that, sorry,
it's okay. It's
I
absolutely
lost my
fine.
train of thought again. I knew where I was going with it. I lost it. Hang on, let
Yeah.
me think. 25, oh yeah, it's a trait, not a disorder. Okay, right.
Do you want to do that little bit again? Start
Yeah,
with
the context bit. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
sorry.
Okay. There's no need to apologize. We've got plenty of time. We can clap all day long. It doesn't matter at all because the actual bit, you'll be surprised what they can do. They'll make it seamless. So, it
Hope
doesn't
so.
matter at all.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
okay.
Okay.
So just to put this in a little bit of context, around 25 to 30% of the population are thought to be highly sensitive. And the other thing about it is it's actually a trait. It's not a disorder. It's not a diagnosis of any type. It's a personality trait that this many people in the population have, and it's context specific as well. So we might get onto that a bit later on, but depending on the environment you've grown up in, the experiences you've had, will dictate how strongly or how reactive you might be to certain circumstances.
Mm.
So I don't know if you fit in any of those categories or how that's sitting with you, but
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people relate to one of those sort of areas that you spoke about, and maybe not all of them, but absolutely. And that perhaps feeling of not belonging or not quite there, or responding differently to the average person, and actually the impact that might have on the individual, how they feel a bit out of it. It reminds me a little bit of neurodiversity, where people just like that's a trait as well, where people don't really feel they quite fit in. This sort of not fitting in, is that a common experience with people with HSP?
Yeah, I think it really is. And I think what you've said there about the neurodiversity, there's some question. Some people say HSP is a highly sensitive person. I'll just
Yeah.
shorten it to HSP. It is a neurodiversity, but other people say there's some question over that. But anyway, not fitting in is one of the key kind of factors for people. Particularly, so if they haven't had those experiences growing up where it's been appreciated, where it's been celebrated, where they've learned to recognize the strengths of their trait. And it's very common, really, that people will hear the terms, you're too shy, you're too touchy, you shouldn't take things so seriously, what are you getting all worked up for? All these kinds of messages that we get when we're growing up, they suddenly make us think, it's not okay to be me. I have to try and be somebody else. And that's when we rely on a whole host of other kind of techniques to manage our natural selves, which include things like people pleasing, masking those emotions, comparing ourselves to other people, just trying really hard to fit in and be accepted. So yeah, it can be quite tough for people.
I can hear that, and of course, if you are a and if it's okay for the viewers, we'll use HSP as a
Mm.
shortened version now, because I think most people know what that means now. Is you know, that can get reinforced, I suppose, by the environment that you live in. If people continue say, you know, reinforce that there's something wrong with you, type of thing, or not fitting in, that can lead to sort of even more problems. And if you're highly sensitive, again, you can take that quite personally. You can take that deeper
Mhm. Yeah.
as something wrong with you. Yeah,
Mm.
I can see that. Yeah, wow. So it's a really good topic to talk about because I'm amazed how high it is. You know, the percentage of the population is really high, isn't it? And I think that
Absolutely.
mm, totally, yeah. And I think you also made a point is that the impact it has on the person, like whether the person actually feels sort of more stressed or burnt out as a result. Is that true? And could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think people who are highly sensitive are more susceptible to the impact of stresses. So whether that's, childhood trauma, whether that's workplace stress here and now, and if they haven't had the experiences that have been supportive, perhaps growing up, then they won't have learned the strategies to deal with later stress. I don't know if your listeners might have heard of the window of tolerance. So this is kind of we all have a different window of tolerance to stress, and we can deal with so much stress before we become hyper aroused. So where we get that fight or flight response, or we become hypo aroused, where we go into that kind of freeze, shutting down state. But for highly sensitive people, they have a smaller window of tolerance, so it takes less for them to go into that kind of fight, flight, or freeze response. Definitely.
Mm, yeah, I can see that, and again, that was explained beautifully about just that sort of less tolerance of stress, so they're more
Mm.
vulnerable to feeling stressed as well, and the burnout as well. Okay, um, and uh, and also, I think maybe one of the way the coping is that they
Mhm.
start sort of the pattern of people pleasing as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that in with HSP? What's the people pleasing about?
Yeah, I mean, lots of people can get into people pleasing. It's not, exclusive to HSPs, but I think again, because we feel more, because we pick up more on other people's feelings as well. Lots of people please because they worry about letting other people down. And for HSPs who really can feel and empathize with other people's emotions, they don't want to let people down. They feel the guilt massively. They worry about disappointing other people. Um, they're more susceptible to, for example, the impact of trauma, which can lead to people pleasing as a way of keeping themselves safe when they're younger in situations, are feeling like they fit in. So that big kind of a piece of not feeling like you fit in, people pleasing is a way to get in with the right people, to feel accepted within groups. Um, so yeah, I think it can be really a big coping mechanism for lots of people who are highly sensitive.
And it reminds me again a little bit like masking from neurodiversity. You sort of learn
Mm. Mm.
strategies to sort of, you know, move away from your true self and just to sort of mask and just to sort of do certain behaviors. You learn what
Mhm.
pleases people, isn't it? And you just carry on that as well. But that disconnect from actually how you really truly feel about yourself inside, I assume that sort of happens. That
Yeah, yeah, the disconnect is huge, really. I think that's a lot of highly sensitive people are kind of searching for that reconnection, that sense of belonging, that sense of being, that sense of kind of feeling heard and understood for who they truly are, not for who they've tried to be for everybody else or for
Mm,
what they think was expected of them.
mm,
So that's that's partly why kind of I went into this field is my my own experiences of realizing I was highly sensitive and then feeling accepted and validated and heard were just so um, progressive, I suppose. I don't know if that's the right word, but they were so healing, I suppose is the word. It was such a healing experience for me, and I really wanted to be able to draw on all of my experience and to provide that for other people. So the key part of any work I do with people is that they feel heard, they feel seen, they feel understood, they feel nurtured, and they feel accepted.
Yeah. Thank you so much for telling the listeners that you too are somebody who is a highly sensitive person yourself. And I suppose, it's turning an area of your difficulty into a strength because you can use all that empathy and compassion to people to come to see you because you can really maybe not relate in everything, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of relatability, a lot of empathy that you can
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of show to people to help them to understand that they aren't alone. You can really feel for them. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. I sorry I didn't mention that at the start, but yeah, that's why I got into this is through my own experiences and through wanting to help other people have better experiences, really. And we also have a kind of real intuition as well. So it can be really key in that therapeutic relationship that you're reading between the lines. I mean, I didn't realize this was a thing. I've done it all my life. It's just you pick up what's not being said, you see what's beneath the words, you feel what people are feeling. And that's really can be quite moving and quite profound for people who've not experienced that before. So yeah, it's lovely work, really.
It's a lovely reframe of how you've used your difficulties to help other people as well.
Mm.
I also think maybe everything you've mentioned, Sally, is great sort of therapy skills for a psychotherapist, that intuition and empathy and understanding what's sort of going on. So even if a person doesn't fulfill the category of highly sensitive, an individual would want to go to a therapist who feels they take effort to understand them and empathize and show compassion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Um, and I would say that, it's not kind of a very strict category, if you like. It's
Mm.
it's a continuum from low
Yeah.
sensitivity to high sensitivity. So even if you don't tick all the boxes and fit right in,
Yeah.
like you said, there may be aspects of yourself that you are more sensitive, certain areas of your life.
Yeah.
You might be an overthinker or you might feel things really deeply. But having that space is great for a wide range of people on that spectrum. So
Mm.
yeah,
And feeling accepted for who you are as well. It's okay to be highly sensitive as well, isn't it? There are some positives about it, and just to hear that, isn't it? It's very encouraging for an individual person to hear that in therapy. So yeah, that's a great start, a great foundation there to build upon. Um,
yeah.
and
I
I
love that.
well,
Sorry, I was just going to mention what you said there about that feeling like it's okay to be you. That's a bit of a mantra for me, and it's why I'm here today because I'd never before would have kind of put myself into these speaking opportunities. It feeds into that whole performance-based kind of overstimulation and overthinking, but I want other people who are feeling this way to feel like it's okay to be them as well. That's my core kind of purpose and goal in all of the work that I'm doing. So thank you for
yeah,
mentioning that.
absolutely. I'm just sort of imagining people in different situations. I imagine people maybe at parties where, there's sort of like maybe a loud raucousness type of thing and feeling of that, or at work where, you're in a meeting and you're feeling very anxious about speaking out to a meeting,
Mhm.
all those type of things. And other people might be thinking, why isn't that person sort of what's the problem? Why can't they sort of speak up? But I think what
Yeah,
you're saying for that person, those are very difficult situations to be in.
they are, and I think there's a real risk of us being undervalued at work, particularly because maybe we're not getting our ideas across. Maybe we've
Yeah.
got lots of ideas and thoughts and creative solutions to what's going on, but we don't feel comfortable. We need to think about it first. We need to reflect on it. We need time and space to do that. And if we're not given that, we can kind of get passed over and just think, oh, well, she doesn't speak, she's not confident or whatever. That's, kind of a message I've had quite a lot. And overcoming that can be tough. But, if you can maybe find the people who are your supporters at work, write things down. You don't have to kind of bring something in that meeting, but you could think about it. You could take it to the person afterwards and say, I've been reflecting, I've been thinking, and I think this might be a really good way forwards. So there are things that you can do really based on your skills that you can bring into the workplace. Yeah, finding your people who can support you, I think, is key in that aspect. And actually, while we're talking about work, I don't know if we were going to get onto this, but I think one thing that's key is often people feel like they don't fit in at work either, and maybe they've got into work roles that they think they should have done because this was the narrative that was around them growing up, or this is what people in their kind of cultural societal class normally do, or whatever the reasons. But we often don't listen to our true kind of instinct, if you like, around what we really want. So I think if you're struggling at work, it's really getting in touch with the values that are driving, what you're doing, why are you there, what is it about your work that you really love and enjoy? Are there any bits of your work that you really love and enjoy? And if there aren't, how can you kind of maybe make some changes, get involved in things that do kind of speak to you, or even think about moving roles. So there are things you can do. It's just finding your place. I think finding your place and finding your people is really key.
And I think very good advice, and that support, like you say, and obviously managers aren't always trained to understand what a highly sensitive person is, and therefore it's sort of puzzling, how can I help that person? But I think what you do is you help the individual to understand how to work through these things, and you've already given some really good examples of how a person can actually share their knowledge and ideas. If it's not in a big meeting, they can do it in other ways as well. And perhaps can also explain to a manager maybe a little bit more about themselves, and so that there's a shared understanding of the areas which you struggle with, and therefore that might also help so that the manager can support you better. So which would be lovely, wouldn't it, if you
It
again.
would be lovely to have all of these kind of open and
Yeah.
supportive managers, which unfortunately doesn't always happen. But yeah,
No.
even just thinking about the small things, adaptations you can make to your environment, to
Yes.
taking regular breaks in your day, getting out in nature if you can't, even just bringing up a little virtual nature scene while you're on your lunch break, if you make sure you have a lunch break. All those basic kind of self-care things come into play as well. Yeah, and trusting your intuition to make choices in where you are and what you want to do. Flexible working is a lot more accepted these days. I don't know if there's more of a pull for people to get back into the office now, but if you can, find ways that you can make it work for you in the best way you can.
And if oh, this is my trait, I'm an HSP, then you can kind of like feel more comfortable knowing that's what you have, and therefore I can do something about it again. And what you're sharing, Sally, is lots of ideas of okay, I've got this, I understand myself better, and therefore and I can actually, there are strategies there to help me. Now I understand what the problem is, about feeling different, I think. So it's really, really good.
Mm.
I just want to ask you another thing you said that people with HSP have, and that's this sort of perfectionism, that they often fall into the perfectionist trait. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so again, it's very linked with some of the things we've already talked about, with that kind of not fitting in, not feeling accepted. This can lead to kind of feeling not good enough, low self-esteem, low self-worth. And actually we can then become our own critics, that we tell ourselves that we should be doing better, we should be doing more, we should be doing what everybody else is doing. And that leads to us kind of developing these really unrelenting standards. And actually, if you ask the people around you, they wouldn't have those standards for you. It's they come from within. And we need to kind of learn to be more flexible with some of our rigid rules and beliefs that we have about those standards. It's what's a good enough kind of result rather than what's the perfect, because nobody's perfect. We can't do it all. Yeah, so it can be, again, lots of people have this tendency, but can be even more so for highly sensitive people. The other reason is also we might want to avoid criticism or avoid feeling like we've failed in some way, because that can feed back into that narrative of not good enough, or it triggers all of those really strong emotional reactions when we are criticized that may not be as strong in other people. We feel it really deeply and it really hurts, and we can sometimes let our emotions kind of get away with us rather than seeing it for what it is, kind of constructive. Hopefully, if it is constructive. But yeah, there's lots of ways that can show itself.
I can see, I think, you made the point earlier that they're all linked as well. So if you
Mm.
get into perfectionist behavior as an avoidance to being criticized as well, you can also be praised more for perfection again at work, can't you? For doing a 110% type of thing. But that can obviously lead to more stress and burnout as well, or
Absolutely,
staying
yeah.
at work more and over striving.
Yes, yeah. Over striving, more burnout. And also it feeds back into the people pleasing, because it's like, oh, when I get that praise, it feels really nice. It strokes my ego, it makes me feel better about myself. So I've got to do more of that thing. I've got to achieve more, do more, be more. And we just need to stop. It's exhausting. Or just find ways to ease it. It's not possible to stop, is it? We all have things to do, but just to be aware of it and be able to think about what is enough, what is just enough that you can get by on, which can be tough. It's easy to sit here and say, just throw those rules out the window, but that's, I suppose, if you're really struggling with that, that's where coming into therapy can help you to look at some of these patterns, why they've developed, some of these kind of rigid kind of rules and behaviors, and we can work more deeply on how to kind of get out of those patterns as well.
I can imagine people sort of, coming to your therapy and actually not even knowing what's wrong, just saying, I'm just absolutely exhausted. I don't feel I fit in, or I'm overreactive to things. And I suppose one of the things you offer is to sort of to see whether they have any of these traits and to sort of recognize them and call them what they are. Like, oh, I think you've got a bit of perfectionism there. And this is what we can do to work on it. Again, it's sort of naming the problems, isn't it? And helping a person to understand themselves better would be a really good intervention, rather than people just coming and feeling there's a whole load of stuff that I don't understand and I'm confused and I'm overwhelmed and I don't understand what's wrong with me.
Yes, yeah. I think that there's a lot there in what you've said, but I think a lot of people come to therapy because they're just feeling overwhelmed by
Yeah.
everything and they don't know why. And then
Yeah.
they start to kind of blame themselves again, and then it becomes that self-critic, and then they get back into the I've got to do better and back into those cycles. But there comes a point where they're like, I need some help with this.
Mm.
So yeah, really teasing apart what's going on for that person can be hugely kind of educational, insightful for them, and just recognizing some of those patterns and what might be contributing to those kind of patterns that they've got stuck in. Sometimes is the main part of the therapy itself is really great for people to, once they see it and they know it, they're like, I'm doing this because of this. What
Yeah.
I can actually do this a different way. I can choose to step away from those patterns and do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't say I don't kind of take people through a checklist and say,
No.
let's tick this off, but I'll be listening out for things that will in mind that kind of will trigger in me. Oh yeah, I think this person might be highly sensitive, and I'll kind of maybe just introduce it gently. Not kind of not everyone wants to hear it, but
Yeah.
there's places you can go to kind of do these checklists. There's some other websites and things out there that
Yeah.
have lots of good resources on. So yeah.
But because you're highly sensitive yourself, Sally, I think you'll deliver that in a highly sensitive way as well. I'm sure you'll share that information in a way where people can kind of accept and understand. And I think the message is it's not a bad thing, is it? It's actually a deeper level of understanding of the person themselves and what they're working with always a kind of hope that people can change as well. So yeah, I'm sure you'll do it in a very highly sensitive way, which is good to hear.
I hope so.
You don't really want a
That's what
blunt therapist, do you, really? I don't think. Okay.
no, no. And I think maybe sometimes people have had therapy experiences in the past where it's been very much kind of manualized, if you like. It's been
Mm.
very kind of, we have computerized therapies now as well, which, they work for a lot of people. I'm not knocking them, but the people who are highly sensitive, who felt like they haven't been seen or heard or fit in or accepted, that's going to just shut them down. They're not going to get what they need from that, which is to be seen, which is to be
Mm.
heard, to be
Mm.
understood.
Mm.
And that's key for the work I do. I really
Mm.
want people to have that experience. So if you have had therapy before and you think it's not for me, it might just be that you didn't have the right kind of therapy
Yeah.
for you. So
Mm.
definitely.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I do the podcast is people understand therapy more and have choice as well. So
Mm.
this is for people who may have highly sensitive person, or somebody who thinks they are a little bit more sensitive, is okay. So that this kind of therapy might work better for me. It's worth having a try and seeing whether there's more of a connection and relatedness there as well, rather than going to anybody who perhaps doesn't have the special skills that you have, Sally, to actually pick up on this and help people with it, which is
Yes,
great.
yeah. There are lots of it. There are others out there as well. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think what I always say to people coming to me is, please feel free to speak to other people. And I think most therapists will offer, an initial free kind of consultation where you just get a chance to have a chat with somebody and see if you connect on that level, because that's one of the key, as you know, Wendy, it's one of the key factors to good outcomes in therapy, is that relationship that you have
Yeah.
with your therapist.
Mm.
So yeah, I offer a free 15-minute introductory chat for people if they want to have a chat with me first and see whether
Mm.
we're a fit. And I think
Mm.
it's a great thing that people should do before they go into any therapy, because it's a big
Yeah.
commitment and you want to know that you're going
Yeah.
to make the most out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great that you offer that, because like you say, people can just sort of have a bit of a sort of mini experience and see whether even therapy is right for them as well. Because some people, I think, have barriers about therapy. And people believe it's weak. And I always turn that around and say, actually, I think it's a very brave thing to do, is to go to therapy and to have the bravery to look at yourself and to look at the areas your problems. There's a vulnerability and opening up needed, isn't it? So I think it's a really brave thing to do, to actually access therapy, not a weakness at all. But some people bring that kind of belief along to therapy, which doesn't help.
Yeah, I think it's hard to get away from that, isn't it? But I think
Mm.
um perhaps that's maybe why I kind of come at it from a different route as well. So I also have the coaching
Yes.
practice, which I think coaching seems so much more accessible and acceptable to people. But there is a lot of overlap between what we do. But I think that can be another way in for people
Yes.
if they want to see a coach, but get
Yeah.
the right coach for you
Yeah.
as well.
Absolutely. And a very good point as well. And actually knowing what the difference is. And I suppose people can have a conversation with you about what the difference is and what to expect from therapy compared to coaching as well. So yeah, so people can choose. There's a choice there as well. That sounds really
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And another thing that I think you mentioned earlier is that sometimes people who are highly sensitive, often maybe experience, if you have a trauma, maybe they experience a little bit more deeper than another person might, to sort of take it more to heart. Could you tell us a little more about that, Sally?
Yeah, so just like any other kind of distressing event or experience, highly sensitive people are more susceptible to the impact of trauma because we feel more deeply, because we process things more deeply. So we're more likely to ruminate and think over it. And because the reaction of that kind of the emotional reaction to the trauma can be more intense. So we highly sensitive people do struggle more with traumatic events, unfortunately. But the little light there is that we also have something called vantage sensitivity, which means that whilst we kind of are more susceptible to the negative effects of these kinds of experiences, we're also more likely to have positive outcomes from therapy, from coaching, from seeking help. So it's that kind of post-traumatic growth. We're more likely to have a better experience of that because it works both ways. It's not all about the kind of the difficulties we have, but we have lots and lots of strengths, and with the right support and encouragement, we can really flourish after
Yeah,
those events. So there's still hope for people who are
absolutely.
feeling
Yeah.
this way.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I was just sorry. I was just going to say that I think for me that really, even before I knew about the trait of high sensitivity, there were certain people I worked with who I was really drawn to, and it was the people who did reflect more and did think more deeply, and who were kind of more spiritual, more aware of their own kind of inner self. So I've been working with highly sensitive people for many, many years, but perhaps didn't have the label for it
Yeah.
until much more recently. So um, they are all the strengths of those people that will help them to have a good outcome from their therapy. So it's really, again, it's a really nice kind of place to be, to help people
Mm.
walk along that path
Yeah.
towards their own recovery.
Mm. And I hear the sort of process there, like people go perhaps to see you and there's a not understanding or knowing and just sort of stress and burnout. And then there's, okay,
Mm.
so these are the problems that I have and this is the plan. But then it's sort of turn around to actually to another level, which is sort of like, these are actually, we can turn this around and turn these challenges into strengths and opportunities. And that, like you said, that the ability to reflect and to think very deeply is a great trait in therapy, isn't it? So that people really go away and think about things and reflect on things, and actually being more compassionate and more empathic are lovely qualities to have. And so if people understand that and understand that those are strengths, and that might give them the confidence to go out and actually engage with more people because they think, well, actually, these are really good skills that I've got.
Yes, yeah. And sometimes they don't, like you say, they don't recognize that in
Mm.
themselves. So part of the work, I think once you've got to a certain point with managing whatever trauma or struggles they're having, is what do you want moving forwards, and what are the strengths and skills and qualities that you have that are going to help you with
Mhm.
that. And there are lots of different ways of working that can bring those out for people. But I really love the kind of I don't know if you come across the Laurel Parnell attachment focused EMDR work, which is very much drawing on all of those inner resources to help people move forwards. So there's some really lovely work around that, and bringing in the parts work as well. So the
Yeah.
parts of people that they haven't allowed to show because of whatever reason, really allowing those parts to come out and integrate with the system, if you like, to be more present and to bring whatever it is they squashed down all those years ago, whether that's kind of joy or creativity or whatever. It's just helping people reconnect with those kind of parts of themselves that maybe they've
Yeah.
just neglected for one reason or another. Um,
And
yeah.
just so people perhaps understand, they might say, "Oh, what does attachment informed mean with the EMDR?" Can you perhaps give a bit of an example, say, so people can understand what that means?
Yeah, so I suppose traditionally EMDR might be seen as working with post-traumatic stress disorder, or a traumatic event has happened and you use EMDR to work through that. But for people who haven't had the soothing, kind of nurturing, nourishing environments growing up, where they may, and it's not always about the things that have been done to them, but sometimes it's about the things that weren't there. So the things that were missing, like, perhaps their parents weren't great with managing their emotions themselves. So they never learned how to do that with their children. So therefore you don't learn how to soothe yourself. So attachment focused EMDR goes back to some of these earlier childhood experiences that may not have been hugely traumatic, but they've affected that person and how they deal with their lives currently. So it might be that, say, for example, they get criticized at work and they have a really strong reaction. It might not just be that they're being highly sensitive. It might be that this was a narrative that they had growing up, that there was a lot of criticism around. So EMDR kind of, the attachment focus EMDR really teases out some of those earlier narratives and patterns that people can get stuck in, and replaces them with the good resources, if you like, with the soothing, with the nurturing resources. And part of that comes through the therapy, and part of it comes from within the person, and from the resources they've got around them as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. And it sounds it's something I endorse as well. So it sounds like a really great therapy. And I think the parts work you mentioned also, I think what you said there, it's sort of maybe looking at areas you've suppressed. So actually finding more creativity and joy. So rather
Mm.
than feeling as though you've got to be rigid and be the sort of perfectionist, hold it in kind of person, you're actually looking and finding other parts to that person which haven't been expressed or haven't been sort of seen, or they've sort of not shown them or covered them up. Yeah. And it sounds like part of the
Yes,
therapy
yeah.
process is to celebrate all aspects of that individual.
Yes, that's a really nice way of putting it. Yeah, to celebrate your strengths is a shortcut, I suppose, but celebrate those inner parts that, for whatever reason, have become hidden, or just don't feel that they can show themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a nice healing kind of journey, and it does take time, but
Yeah,
people
yeah,
can get there.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's hope also for people who perhaps haven't had a very good early childhood. These are very advanced therapies that have been used for quite a while now, and they're very effective as well. And I'm sure
mm,
again with your skills, you would take that person through them so they feel supported and understood through those as well. Because obviously it's a big thing to go back into your childhood and to address those areas. But the techniques sound wonderful when you describe them that way. And you use another term. I just want to ask you a little bit more about this, Sally, if it's okay. You use post-traumatic growth, and that sounds like a lovely thing. But I just wonder, people might not know what that means. So again, can you just explain that a little bit more? Give an example of what you mean by post-traumatic growth.
oh, I think this might be different for different people, but I
Okay.
suppose it's how much somebody learns from what they've been through and takes that forward into, this is my understanding, you might have a different one as well, but how they can take the learning from what they've experienced and use it to learn more about themselves and to bring that into their how they want to be moving forwards. Um, I think yeah, I don't know if I have a really great explanation for that, but what would you, how would you,
It
how would you
sounds good to
describe that?
me, and it is. I think what you're saying is that there's again, it's that hope, isn't there? That even though you've had a bad experience and it's been devastating for you, and again, if you're highly sensitive, it's had more impact on you. Number one, you've got the tools to help people through that process, but also there's another level of growth there that they can take it
Mm,
even further and think, okay, although I had a really bad experience, I can take things from that experience and make something else different of it. They can learn something about them. I think what I often say to people, and see if you agree with this, Sally, is you recognize the strengths within that person. They recognize
Mm.
their ability to survive and endure very difficult things, but they keep on going as well. That might be one example, is that people start to notice, that process, although very difficult, has actually shown the strengths that they have.
Yeah, I think you put it probably much better than I did. Um, but I think sometimes almost you get there can be limits on therapy depending on where the referrals have come from, and you might see somebody through their trauma and to kind of set them up in terms of how they'd like to see their life moving forwards. You might do a bit of that work, but often I feel there isn't the space within therapy to do that always, unless people are coming to you for that specific thing. And that's, I suppose, another reason why I set up coaching side of my practice, because for me, it's that after they've been through all of this stuff, supporting them along that journey to kind of find those deeper connections within themselves, their deeper purpose, the meaning that's derived from what they've been through and how that they can then take that forward. So um, I'm not a great one for kind of labels and explanations, but it's the feeling, it's the felt sense of this is the journey I want people to experience, from kind of getting through their traumas, moving past their present day struggles to going on to being the best person that they can be, bringing out all of those strengths and kind of deeper connections.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you make a very good point that this is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not that you can turn any trauma into a kind of like a positive experience. We're not saying that. It can be a
No.
real journey. It can be a real process. It can take a long, long time. But so that people understand what they can get from therapy or coaching,
Mm.
and how it can help them as well. That there are these processes that perhaps people don't really know or understand, if they've never experienced therapy, what to expect. But I think it's really good that you just explain that very well, that there is also a process after going through the trauma, which is much more about personal growth and building on
Mm.
resources and
Yeah.
inner strengths. Yeah,
Yeah. And for those listening who might be thinking, oh, this sounds really intense. Uh, if you're highly sensitive, you're probably drawn to that, but actually it isn't for everyone. And there's a time and a place. And I'm not getting people in saying now we've got to delve into your deepest, darkest kind. It's very much a collaborative process of what are you bringing, what do you want to work on, what's most important to you. It's giving the client the choice as well, I think, is really
absolutely.
key, particularly for people who are highly sensitive and may not have felt like they've had a lot of kind of say in how their lives have gone, because they've always been trying to fit in with other people. And um, we can work on this past stuff if you want to, but we can very much stay here and now as well. And that might be more around managing their everyday stresses and finding tools to do that. So it's not a one-stop shop, and it's certainly not this is all we can do. It's whatever you are bringing that we kind of work on, whatever the client is coming with is what is where we start.
And a highly sensitive person might think, very deeply before they come to therapy, because they might be worried about, you know, all the things we talked about before, about being
Mm.
judged, or even from a therapist, they might think, oh gosh, that therapist is going to judge me, or is going to tell me what to do and everything like that. And you're making a really important point that good therapy should never be about that. It's much more about that joint working and the client choice as to what they want to work on. So a very good point to make, Sally, just on the general principles of what you'd expect from therapy and what you expected from a good therapist as well. So yeah, they're
Yeah,
important, aren't they? They're very important.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely, yeah. I think I alluded to it before, where people might not have had that experience and it might have put them off, but not to not to feel put off, and just to reach out. And if you've got questions, that's what we're here for, isn't it? To kind of ease people into it. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be kind of just finding your way. And that's why we produce these kind of resources for people, and ways that they can find kind of tools they can use here and now, rather than, I suppose, testing the waters a little bit, getting to know the people. that they might want to work with. It's finding out about what they've got on offer before they go into that therapy work. Who, what are they talking about on social media? If kind of what have they got on their website? What resources are available? Yeah, I know there's probably a lot of people who are just not making that step, but what I'm trying to say here is it will happen and when the time is right for you. And that's kind of, you can do lots of things around that, but yeah, I'm losing my thread a little bit here,
I
but
think what you're saying, Sally, is it's important to choose a therapist that you feel is right for you and is comfortable for you as well. And I think your point you're making is you can find out about a therapist regarding what they put on their website, and you can read about them, what they post on social media, and feel whether there's some sort of alignment there as well. So even before you actually have the meeting, you can sort of, nowadays there's lots of information out there, which is a good thing to
yeah,
actually find out, what's their background, what's their experience, what they specialized in. And that's a good thing. And then,
yes, it is, yeah,
yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah.
because we can talk ourselves out of these things, I think, quite easily.
Yes.
Uh, but
Yeah.
yeah, there is something about kind of being in front of people and having those conversations with the person that really can help remove some of those barriers that you might
Mm,
have. And
totally.
even if you still decide therapy isn't right for you, then you might know that that person is someone you would want to go to at some
Yeah.
point in the
Yeah.
future too.
Yeah. So it sounds as though you the goal of working with highly sensitive people is ultimately that personal growth, that you've sort of mentioned lots and lots of skills and abilities that you can actually help a person to develop. Is there anything else that you wanted to add as a sort of final point about, personal growth for people with HSP?
Um, I'm not sure. I think we might have kind of covered it all in terms
Okay.
of finding that space where you feel you can grow, where it feels safe to do so is key. Whether that's finding a community where you feel you can share your experiences, or a group, or whether it is therapy. That kind of there's a term that so I've got a little group that I'm in with another couple of highly sensitive people, and we use the term believing mirrors quite a lot. Because when you find those people who are going to believe in you and believe in what you want to achieve, and you can have that mirrored back to you, the power of that is massive. And I suppose that's what you need when you're on this journey of growth and development. And I think highly sensitive people do have this deeper need to find that they always maybe feel like there's something missing, that kind of, what is it? What's my calling? What's my purpose? Because they've got a deeper, more kind of outlook on life, and they really want to kind of use their strengths in the right way. So yeah, having those believing mirrors and just really finding your purpose and calling, I think is the personal growth
Mm.
aspect, and
Mm.
developing the strengths and the skills around that
Mm.
will help you
Mm.
move forward and
Yeah.
support as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And
Yeah.
it sounds such a hopeful process as well, and hopefully people really hear that from your experience. And Sally, thank you so much for sharing such wisdom and knowledge. Um, Generally, as a therapist, clinical psychologist, and coach, um, all the rich information you brought today. But I love your special niche about really looking at people who perhaps are suffering, and and really need to understand that and actually what they can do to get some help. So I understand. Just want to mention that download, that free download that you have again. How do people get hold of you if they want to perhaps see you as a therapist, clinical psychologist, or coach? And also, how do they get the download? Do you have a website that they can use?
Yeah, sure. So the download is actually on my coaching website, which is
Okay.
highly sensitive psychologist.com. And this is the 40 ways to protect your energy as a highly sensitive person, which I mentioned earlier. And I think for anyone who is even just thinking about this feels way too much, this is a great place to start, is learning how to protect your energy for anyone really is key to, being able to think clearly, being able to act how you want to act, being able to get your emotions under control. And that's the first step in any kind of progression. So that's on Highly Sensitive Psychologist website. And I have my therapy website, which is sallyconwaypsychology.co.uk. You can book in for a 15-minute chat on either of those places, or I hang out on LinkedIn quite a lot. You can book in for a chat there as well, if you so choose. Yeah, I don't know if I should mention that I'm looking to bring my services together so it's more so there's more clarity and kind of continuity for people, and so it's not so confusing, but I'm not quite there yet. So watch this space for those are the places to get me right now anyway.
That's lovely. And those notes will be available in the show notes if people actually want to sort of read that. That's absolutely fine. But I think probably if people just Google Sally Conway, they will just, that hopefully your information will come up as well. So I'm sure people, if they really want to find you, they
Hopefully.
will find you.
I know there is a
Yeah.
judo world champion called Sally Conway. So that's not
Yes,
me.
maybe not go to that one.
Don't have
That
that
might be a
string
different
to
kind
my
of
bow.
therapy. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
thank
lovely.
you.
Okay. So thank you so much for being an amazing guest and for sharing all your wisdom and insights. It's very, very good and very, very entertaining and very informative as well, Sally. So thank you so much for being a guest today.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. You've been a great host. It's been lovely to talk with you. Thanks.
And thank you, everybody, for listening.